Of all the fictional characters who could easily rip out your spine and use it to beat you to death, Superman is one of the friendliest. Often deemed DC's bright, shining symbol of hope and optimism, the good old son of Krypton is perhaps the most famous comic book character of all time. However, like any character with an 8-decade-long history, the Man of Steel isn't entirely squeaky clean. In fact, Supes has carried out some pretty shocking and heinous acts over the decades. Sure, everyone messes up on occasion, but things tend to be a bit more disastrous when you're as powerful as a god. So with that in mind, I'm Will for What Culture, and here are 10 Superman moments that shocked the world. Number 10. Superman and Wonder Woman's sex causes natural disasters. The Dark Knight strikes again. When you think of Superman, the image conjured up is often one of an ultimate hero swatting away bad guy after bad guy, keeping the world safe in the process. What you don't think about, I hope, is the Man of Tomorrow's sex life, unless you're Frank Miller, of course. In Miller's opinion-splitting The Dark Knight Strikes Again, readers got to see a 5-page sex scene play out between Superman and Wonder Woman, a sex scene that was so powerful, many a casualty could be pinned at the door of the Boy Scouts and the Amazon. So intense was the steamy action, oceans raged, islands were evicted, and there was even the innuendo-laden image of a volcano erupting. When you bang so hard you bang other people to death? Well, that's just equally impressive and inconsiderate, really. Number 9. The adoption and abuse of Jimmy Olsen, Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen. Poor Jimmy Olsen. Since his debut way back in 1938, Jimmy has been involved in many gnarly situations that have put his life in danger, but there are also many a time when his supposed best friend Superman was the real problem in his life. One prime example of the legendary Kal-El being a legendary pain in the ass was in the Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen title that began in 1954. While there are a multitude of examples to call upon of Superman being outright cruel to Jimmy, none are quite as shocking as the time the last son of Krypton adopted Olsen. As the tale unraveled, Superman bullied and tormented Olsen at every turn. From Jimmy having to clean Superman's trophy collection to Superman setting his Father's Day presents on fire to simple name-calling, this was a pretty bad time for young Jimmy. So bad, in fact, that Jimmy Olsen would seek legal action to get the entire adoption scrapped. Number 8. Being controlled by Poison Ivy, Batman Hush. Jeff Loeb and Jim Lee's Hush arc is viewed as an all-time great Bat tale, featuring a who's who of Batman's rogues gallery and plentiful twists and turns as a new threat rears its head in Gotham. It also features the shocking moment that Superman turns up under the thrall of Poison Ivy. Of course, the Man of Tomorrow is under the ever-seductive powers of Ivy's sultry charms, but this still doesn't take away from the jaw-dropping shock of seeing these comic book pages play out for the first time. After an entertaining confrontation and brutal battle, readers were soon reminded why Batman is referred to as the world's greatest detective, and the Dark Knight has a kryptonite ring conveniently to hand in his utility belt. Number 7. Killing the Joker, Injustice Gods Among Us. When it comes to some of Superman's most shocking moments, the Injustice Gods Among Us video game and prequel comic offer up an absolute goldmine of horrendous acts carried out by a Boy Scout teetering on the edge. After one of the Jester of Genocide's sinister schemes tricked the Man of Steel into killing Lois Lane and Supes' unborn child, Superman finally does the unthinkable and punches a hole right through the Harlequin of Hate's chest. All of this marked the beginning of the end for Superman's run as the planet's greatest hero, and in turn was the perfect launching point for one of the best alternative universe stories to come out of DC. Number 6. Purposely paralyzing a football star, Action Comics number 4. The famed golden age of comic books is still reflected on kindly to this very day, but some of those stories definitely struggle to hold up when looked through a modern perspective. Case in point, 1938's Action Comics number 4. In this particular one-shot deal, Superman purposefully paralyzed a young football hopeful so he could take his place on the team. Classy move, Supes. For poor Tommy Burke, his dreams of making it as a football star were temporarily put on hold after the big blue Boy Scout injected him with a substance that paralyzed him. Making the most of this, Supes made himself look like Tommy before taking his place on the team and scoring a load of touchdowns. Tommy Burke did get better in the end, but still, paralyzing folks hardly looks good on the old resume. Number 5. Snapping Zod's neck. Man of Steel. Zack Snyder's 2013 Man of Steel was the movie which launched the mixed bag shared cinematic realm known as the DC Extended Universe. And much like the DCEU has split opinion, so too did the shocking end of Snyder's Superman picture. Having battled General Zod, the last son of Krypton is left with the ultimate decision to make. As Zod's heat vision has an innocent family in its sights, Superman makes the call to snap his opponent's neck. To this day, many comic book aficionados and longtime Superman fans lambast this scene as being completely out of character for Superman, and it even indirectly led to the eventual creation of Doomsday in the DC universe. Let that be a lesson not to murder people, kids. Number 4. Offering Pete Ross's son up for alien abduction. DC Comics presents number 13. Just like Jimmy Olsen, Pete Ross is another one of Superman's quote best friends who end up being severely screwed over by the Man of Tomorrow. A childhood pal of Clark Kent's, Pete was one of the few people to know that Clark and Superman were one and the same. Given the trust between the two, you'd think that this friendship was unbreakable, and it was, until Kal-El allowed Pete's only son to be abducted by aliens. This all played out in 1978's DC Comics presents number 13, with the alien Narvin race kidnapping Pete's son, John. The Man of Steel would swoop in and save the day, attempting to rescue the youngster, only to be informed by the Legion of Superheroes that John's abduction was a vital part of bringing peace to the future. Ever the great friend, Supes decided to leave John with the aliens and break the news to his bestest bud that his kid was gone forever. Given that Pete was already a widower at this point, the loss of his only son promptly brought a bitter end to his friendship with Clark, which, you know, that's fair, I guess. Number 3. The Superman Sex Tape. Action Comics 593. Rewinding back to Action Comics 593, this bizarre tale involved Superman, the wife of one of Supes' Justice League buddies, an aptly named villain called Sleaze, and some naughty intentions. Said Justice League buddy was Mr. Miracle, and it was Miracle's wife Big Barda who was put under a mind control spell by Sleaze. Not content with merely having Barda under his spell, Sleaze then followed this up by brainwashing the Man of Steel. If you've got a literal god and his almighty powers under control, what would be the first thing you'd do? Well, if you're Sleaze, then you'd go about making a porno. Obviously. Luckily for Superman, Barda, and if the calamitous bangfest of Superman and Wonder Woman was anything to go by, the entire world, Mr. Miracle would arrive to cockblock and save the day moments before Sleaze's scheme paid off. Number 2. The Death of Dr. Light. Trinity War. For the most part, seeing Superman kill someone is a rarity, even more so when the corpse in question is that of a fellow hero, and that's what makes the act of 2013's Trinity War crossover all the more shocking. With heroes battling other heroes, this new 52 take on Superman majorly oversteps the mark in a jealous rage. Overreacting ever so slightly, Supes aims his heat vision at Dr. Light and kills the guy after Dr. Light accidentally unleashes a burst of energy at Diana. How embarrassing for Dr. Light. Boy, was his face red, right before Superman melted it off. Number 1. Mourning Lois's death by hooking up at her grave. For decades, fans have wondered just how it would be possible for Superman and Lois Lane to have a child. After all, should Lois become pregnant, Earth's yellow sun would give the unborn child the power to literally kick through her stomach. It was one of those interesting hypotheticals until, dear viewers, that's exactly what happened. In the Adventures of Superman Annual number 3, a visitor from the future shows our Man of Tomorrow a glimpse at what lies ahead for him and Lois. Where this future is concerned, Lois becomes pregnant and the aforementioned situation unfortunately plays out. Powered by guilt, the Superman of this particular future leaves Earth behind as he embarks on a mission to kill himself. Only he doesn't kill himself, far from it. Instead, Superman ends up hooking up with a hot alien princess, which is cool, who he somehow ends up necking with at the grave of Lois Lane, which is not so cool. And there you have it, folks, 10 Superman moments that shocked the world. Feel free to drop this video a like if you enjoyed it, and join in the comic conversation with me on Twitter at @USlyDarrellU. And visit WhatCulture.com for daily news, lists, articles, and all that other good stuff. I'm Will for What Culture, thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you next time.